yeah, we will. I just. That's weird.
Oh. Christine, is that you?
Nope, it's someone from Oakland Community College, Jennifer Jennings.
Hi, Jennifer. Can you please mute your phone so we have no background noise,
Yes,
please?
I will.
That would be great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. This is Gretchen Schmidt, the Executive Director of the AACC Pathways Project. And I know that there's a small number of you on, and we scheduled this webinar during people's finals and graduation weeks, but we really wanted to have a consistent group of webinars this springtime. So we are recording them. There are a number of people who have already asked me to send it out to them. So we will certainly do that. It is my pleasure and my privilege to be joined by Christine Mannion and Michelle Shimke from Milwaukee Area Technical College today. And Michelle and Christine, can you hear me? And are you on and you can hear everything okay before I get started? Hang on, folks.
Hey, Gretchen.
Yeah, Christine, what's up?
No, it's Jamie Spatial from Gateway.
Oh, sorry, Jamie. Yeah, Jamie.
No, that's okay. We are having trouble with the Adobe Connect. We're trying to download, and it just keeps telling us download failed. So we are connected via audio, but we can't see anything.
Can't see it? Oh, that's so weird. And I'm having a hard time. Bill, you're typing. I can see you're typing on it too. And I'm having a hard time sharing my document on my screen as well. Like I can share the screen, but when I share the document, it's cutting out the video. And so I have the webinar up now instead of me sharing the screen. Jamie, can you see it now?
No, we can't even get in. It's asking us to download Adobe Connect, and when we click on it to download, it just keeps saying download failed.
Okay. Folks, of course, there's never an ideal with this. I'm fearful to stop it and start it again. I don't know what to do. Hi, this is Gretchen. Christine, is that you and Michelle? I can't get the presenters to join, folks, which is I have their presentation, but I can't get them on. All right, I'm going to again, and hopefully you both can advance the slides from the bottom left-hand corner, and I will, when we finish setting up the platform for the webinars, we will make sure that we upload the presentation that also has the videos embedded in it. So thank you both, and I am going to turn it over to you, and I will monitor the chat for questions.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Gretchen. Can everybody hear me, us? Yes? We're good? Hello? Okay.
So, I think you're good, Christine. I can hear you fine.
Oh,
and
perfect. Thank you.
Folks are typing yes, so I think you're
okay.
all set.
Thank you. All right. Well, thanks again for inviting us to talk with everyone today. We love to talk about guided pathways, but to be clear, we are definitely not here as any kind of experts, but more as fellow practitioners and colleagues. And we're going to talk to you about some of the lessons we've learned so far in the first 18 months of our guided pathways journey. And you can see on this slide, we actually do use the bus metaphor because we do view this as a journey. And we are all in this together, and that's our president, Dr. Martin, there in the front, not driving the bus. That's our security officer, but she's standing in the front window, driving, bringing us along this journey, because we really do feel like it is a journey to take our systems and processes in a new direction toward a new, better version of the student experience. And some of these things you're probably already doing, and we're just going to kind of give you a couple ideas. We're very much into the stay calm and steal everything. So if you hear anything or see anything you need more information about or templates, we're always happy to share. Just to put some context in it, for those of you who don't know us, we're a large urban, minority, majority, 2-year comprehensive technical college with about 200 programs across 4 campuses in 1 location. in our district. So we wanted to start today by talking about change management. And the reason we thought it was important to start here is because this really is about big and small change. And even if you're new to the process or you're deep in it, it's never too late to step back and employ change management strategies. So these are, of course, just the basic principles, and it can be thought about in terms of guided pathways, big picture, but also every process or system that you're trying to change and the impact it has on people, you really need to think about how do you manage that change, because it might not seem big to you or your area or from your vantage point, but to the people with boots on the ground who run a certain process or system on a daily basis and have been invested in it for years, it's so important that this is kind of laid out for them. So when we're talking about vision, we're not just talking about where do we want to be in 5 or 10 years, but this semester, this project, where do we want to be? When we talk about skills, it's not just training for the future, but getting and helping your employees and staff to really talk and consider the talents and skills they already have that might not be utilized, and so that they can see this as kind of an opportunity for them to grow and utilize more of their own skills. And this ties directly into incentives, because we're not talking about money. We're talking about getting people to care. We're getting, really helping them understand why do we have to do better? Why do I have to do better? I'm really good at my job. What's my incentive? And it's not going to be that they're going to get promised a bonus or a promotion, but it's because it's really that call to action, that it's something, a fire in their belly that you really need to help ignite. When it comes to resources, that's the same thing. People will say, well, can we just buy a software? Well, if we could just buy Guided Pathways software, we already would have bought it. But really, it's giving your people the time and the support they need to step back and participate and sit on these committees. And you say, oh, the frontline staff is going to be at the table. Well, not if their supervisors don't let them or schedule around them to allow them to participate. So that's really important, not just about the money. And, of course, action plans. And we'll talk more about short and long-term action plans as we go through this. But I just wanted to kind of put the whole thing in a framework of change management, because even the smallest change really needs to be thought of in that context. So I'm going to turn it over to Michelle, and she's going to talk a little bit about some of the things we are going to cover today.
Thanks, Christine. So we'd like to walk you through the MATC journey. And we know that everyone attending today is at different stages, and we hope that this helps clarify the path no matter where you are in your institution's remodel. So we began by making the case for Guided Pathways. So that's the how and the why we needed to make this change. It's really important to be clear, or people are going to be skeptical. Next, we moved on to what we needed to do and put in place and the plan and engage. And we needed to plan and engage for the entire college community. We wanted to make sure everyone is on the journey and be very inclusive. Continuing forward, the process should also be very collaborative, because we want to design these improvements together. So our college is currently in what we like to call the messy middle, and that's where the bus is. And that's because some pieces have moved from work teams to the build-out stage, and while others are still works in progress. But no matter what, collaboration and engagement leads to connection and ownership by everyone involved. And this makes the build-out phase a lot easier. People want to actually see their hard work and effort in action. And finally, launch and evaluate. Well, we have one foot in this stage with a few projects ready to go, but we'll get into more detail on that a little bit later. Well, we do say that you should begin. We recommend, and we've tried to begin our data collection early. Your successes, they need to be measurable. If the needle is moving, great. If the needle isn't moving or in the wrong direction, you need to evaluate and adjust.
So let's focus on the making the case. In this case, we had the help of AACC and the scale of adoption and our first institute. And what we basically did was we were building a case statement by asking a series of questions, and these are some of them, where we're really trying to really define the scope of what we were changing, thinking about why do we need to change this at all. That's that kind of imperative and urgency. And why do we need to change this now? We've been around for 100 years, so what's the point of changing things right now. It's all fine. And then how come it's my problem? It's just academics or student services, but how are we all responsible for what we're trying to change and solving it? Give us a timeline, and then don't forget about our favorite radio station, WIIFM, which is What's in It for Me. Most of our employees listen to that, so they want to know, how will this affect me? How will my voice be heard? How is my job going to change? So we had a small team that we were taking to AACC Institute number 1, but then we also expanded that, and they became kind of a steering committee, and we went through together, and we really took the time to make this case statement. But the problem with that, of course, is it's a written case statement that, nobody really reads. You can send it out, you can post it, but people don't read it a lot. So what we did was we had converted it into a video, and that's what the video Gretchen was talking about. And so when you receive this, we'll have the YouTube links that you can watch it. And you can, well, you don't know that, but all of the little avatars on the bus actually represent people that are recognizable employees here at the college. And what we did was we launched this in fall of 2017 on our faculty welcome coordination day, and then again with our staff on their staff coordination day. And we really made sure that our rallying cry was bigger than just a standard completion rate. We really looked backwards to the moment someone was interested in the college to the 3-year graduation or completion rate. And we did this so that people would really be able to see how they fit in to the student journey and how they might be able to be part of moving forward and making these changes. We really wanted to, this was a time we started to break down those silos. So that was in January of 2018. And so now Michelle's going to kind of talk you through a little bit more about the spring. And I see the question about build out. We will be getting there and defining that for you in just a minute.
So that video that you're going to eventually see is really cute. And we launched it to make the case, continue to make the case of why we needed guided pathways. But we also knew that we needed to keep laying that foundation. So we started a book club, sort of. We asked the college community to do their own research and recommended what we like to call the book, which is Redesigning America's Community College. And we made sure that the book was available at all of our campus libraries in both physical and ebook format. We held brown bag lunch discussions about it and guided pathways and answered questions and shared ideas. And these brown bags were held often and at all campuses for maximum participation. To close the loop, we invited Dr. Davis Jenkins to come and speak to our college. And while at our school, Dr. Jenkins worked with our President's Cabinet, Strategic Planning Council, and small leadership and employee groups. So once we made the case, it was time to move on to the plan and engage stage. We chose to do this by making guided pathways the focus of our college-wide MATC Day event. So as you can see, Dr. Joyce Walsh-Portillo's little emoji is at the bottom there. She was our designated AACC coach, and she helped us design MATC Day to be a guided pathways engagement opportunity. A little background, MATC Day is a college-wide professional development gathering. Everyone from every department of the college is included, and all campuses are closed to ensure full and mandatory participation. On MATC Day, we share information as well as participate in activities. This is also an opportunity to hold divisional meetings, and at these meetings, we wanted to gather input on how these divisions saw guided pathways impacting their worlds. We also created a guided pathways board game entitled Walk in Our Shoes. This allowed our college employees to move through our current processes through the lens of our students. It was an eye-opening and engaging and enlightening activity. It turns out some of our processes were not as simple as we thought they were. We brought in Dr. Tim Rennick as keynote speaker to discuss student success, equity, and how Pathways has made a remarkable difference at Georgia State and Perimeter College. We're especially excited because Perimeter was very similar to MITC. So 3 months had passed, and our time has been invested in establishing the foundation and framework for our guided pathways, making sure we made our case, planning for the future and all of the changes, and engaging our employees.
So as part of the planning and engaging, part of it is who's going to do the planning, and we really decided we had to do things differently. So a lot of you, or perhaps none of you, and it's just us, but perhaps you know what it's like to be on a committee where you talk and meet, and yet nothing gets done. So we really wanted to make sure we did things differently. We brought together a steering committee made up of all representatives from the employee groups, staff, faculty, administration, and we tried to make sure it did not have the usual suspects, and I think you all know what I mean by that. We wanted to be data informed, which we've been doing as an AQUIP college with AHLC for a number of years, but we wanted to make sure the data was used as a flashlight, not as a hammer, so that people aren't scared of data, and they really understood and we could build trust that we're looking at data for students and about being student-centered and making improvements. We wanted to be more transparent, so we have these as open meetings, and we post the times and days, and we post the agendas and the minutes to the entire college community. We wanted to be more intentional, and we started with the 5-year timeline that we worked under with AACC, kind of using their timeline. We do everything around here basically by working backwards, and because we're part of a state system, you know, for curriculum changes, academic pathways, credit reductions, things like that, we always have to start with, well, if we want to launch in 2020, how long will it take to get through the state? And we work backwards, excuse me, from when we know it has to be done, and that helps us. So we also took our scale of adoption that we had done with our first institute with the AACC, and we turned it into an 18-month scale of adoption, meaning that we know what all these different pieces we have to do, but we can't do everything at once. And it was really good to tell the community, because now that everyone read the book, everybody wants us to do everything at once. We're saying, okay, we're going to do this group of things in the spring, the summer, the fall, et cetera, to keep everybody kind of on task and accountable. And we even drill it down further, and we use 90-day plans. So we have 2 of those each semester and 1 summer. I know it's not exactly 90 days, but you get the idea that we do chunks of things, because again, that also keeps everything very focused and very timely. So however you're going to put together, you know, your communication plan, your committee, as well as some of these planning documents, it's important that it's transparent for us, and that they're very empowered. They need to know, are they consultative, are they recommending, are they deciders, whatever works in your college environment, and also giving them room to make mistakes and fix those mistakes and learn from them. And we say that all the time, that, you know, we are going to do what we can with the knowledge we have right now, and then when we get more data, we will then make it better. So we keep that continuous quality improvement mindset at the forefront kind of all the time. So, and the last part is we want to make sure you include your governing board, because you're going to need their support and their patience, because once they hear about this and learn more about it, we provided the book to all of our board members, showed them the video, and we even had Gretchen come and visit us twice to work with the board at retreats so that they would really understand how important this work is and that we do need their support, but we need their patience. Because once they saw it, they wanted everything changed the next day, which isn't going to happen. But so it's kind of a balance. So we can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that they are also involved. So the steering committee is using national models and best practices, of course, and there is so much stuff out there. But bottom line is you're going to have to build your own model, tweaking what you find. We do look at schools that look like us, but at the same time, other smaller schools or and maybe a rural school, they might have some good practices as well, so don't dismiss it. But the whole idea is you have to make it your own, because, again, if Guided Pathways came off of a shelf, we would all buy that box and be done with it. But we also find that by building it together and figuring out of all the various things that could be happening under Guided Pathways, which ones do we need for our student experience? And that's going to be different for everybody. And that gives more ownership and more belonging, which then will help us in the build-out as we move forward.
So as we built our own model, we really tried to remember that communication is critical. And we've learned that you cannot communicate enough. With big changes, transparency and accessibility is imperative. And that's why we created an internal website to house all things Guided Pathways. Our site needed to be easily accessible and visible. It allows people to access the different charters and team information. We list open meetings, the minutes, the agendas. We also posted resources from national models and videos we created in-house from visits by experts like Dr. Rennick and our AACC coach. We also provided a Guided Pathways feedback form, and this allowed our internal stakeholders the ability to submit questions, concerns, and suggestions. Our President's Resolve is a huge reason why we're a part of Pathways. So when we say communication is critical, she means it too. She recognized her opportunity to communicate directly to the college community. She began town hall-style listening and learning sessions and was accompanied by members of the Pathway Steering Committee. They would visit all the campuses, providing updates to anyone who attended about what had been done, what was in process, and what was coming next. And holding these town halls was really helpful in getting the message out clearly and directly, and dispelling rumors before they even had a chance to start. So we also think that this really helped in building trust at each stop. It's important with all these big changes. Another tool to keep Guided Pathways at the forefront of everyone's mind were the large magnet boards. These were installed at each campus. They're clear but fun reminders of the changes we're going through and why. So now everyone is really, really engaged, and it's been 5 months since we started. We've made the case, we've planned, we've engaged, and now we're ready to begin designing things together. As we stated in the beginning, this process must be very inclusive. If you build it, they might come. If they build it, they will come, and they did. So we sent out the all call for our first design teams and had amazing response. Over 200 volunteers signed up to participate, and we ended up placing 150 of them on teams after ensuring they had all completed their collaborative decision-making training. CDM is a huge part of our college culture. We were shocked to realize that out of the original 200, 119 were new members, meaning they had never been recorded as ever having participated on any team or committee before. This was super exciting because this meant people were really engaged and wanted to be part of the movement. These were real volunteers and not people who were being voluntold. Our design teams were given short-term projects that were communicated by a charter. These charters described the specific scope of the project, the responsibilities of the members, and the deliverables expected. Our design teams were great, but as we continued our journey, we realized we needed to have more action-specific teams. And then these became our content expert and implementation teams. These teams needed to have specific knowledge, these team members, needed to have specific knowledge and experience in order to execute the needs of their charters. And these team members were assembled by leaders who knew who would be the best fit.
So we were going to show you the video, and this is the second video that we created. We talked about that you have to communicate. Well, after about 9 months in our first set of design teams, we had 6 original design teams. They had done a lot of work, and the faculty were coming back in the fall of 2018, and the 6 schools had been divided or moved around by a design team into 8 new academic pathways. Now, they haven't physically moved there yet, and we'll talk more about that during the build-out. But imagine when everyone came back, and a lot of people who had been here a long time left for the summer going, yeah, Guided Pathways, that will be gone before we get back. But those faculty who stayed and who continued and who worked with us, they weren't as surprised. But others of our 500 full-time faculty, when they came back and we gave them the updates, they thought, okay, I'm signing up now. So our fall group of design teams even had more volunteers than our first group. So again, we'll send the video out. I apologize you can't see it, so that you can kind of just get a sense of how we continued our communication as we were designing together.
So things are really moving, and we needed to ensure transparent, clear, and accessible documentation supporting all of these changes. So we decided to provide these, create these key decision documents. This document captures the decisions made, communicates the rationale behind the decision and with the data that is needed, who the decision makers were, and describes appropriate stakeholder voices captured in the process. It also lays out the anticipated time frame for all the changes. And we send this out by email, college-wide for review, and then post these on our internal website for everyone to access. By providing these documents, we also believe that this provides a level of trust for the entire organization, because nothing is hidden, words can't be changed, and it's on paper.
So this brings us to build out. So Amy, I hope this will help explain what we mean by this. It brings us basically to where we are today and tomorrow. And yeah, it's getting real for a lot of people. And this is where the fear of change is really starting to manifest as resistance to change. So again, it's so important that we laid that groundwork and we had that engagement before we began. And we have to keep in mind, of course, that the unknown is always worse in most cases than the reality, so the build-out can't happen in a vacuum. So part of our build-out is to continue to make the case. And for us, this meant going back to our rallying cry of improving our student experience, but now going beyond graduation numbers and percentages and really talking about our students. When we had done our data dives into our student experience, we discovered the social justice issues behind the students. We found out that our students need more help with housing, with food, with transportation, with trauma in their life. And we are living in the fourth poorest city of our size in the nation, the most segregated city of our size in the nation, and we were able to really have hard conversations and see and talk about how changing how we do things that would benefit our students would also have a stunning effect on our community. And so with the help from the AACC and its partners, we started at the national level with diagrams such as this during employee professional development days and various meetings, where we could show that Milwaukee is the yellow circle there, where the dark red is indicating where children born into poverty have virtually no chance of getting out. And this is our home. So for you, whatever your case is, there probably is a social justice element to it, just knowing what that is and using data and then explaining it to all of your people as you build out. Because it gets so hard and so messy that if they don't have something to hold on to, it becomes harder and messier. So we even went further down and drilled into the Milwaukee data. And this is our community. And when we look at this, as the chart shows, when you're talking about the people in poverty at the state level, and then to our county, where 80% of our students are from, it's already at 21%. The city of Milwaukee, where our main campus sits, is at 27% living in poverty. And then one of our most impoverished area codes in the state at 42% of the people that are living in poverty. This 53206 zip code also has the highest rate of incarceration, highest number of vacant lots, highest number of children in poverty, all the things you can imagine. And this is just one piece of the data puzzle that we were showing and sharing. And this became part of our story. And it helped all of us remember here, our internal community, that there's urgency about this work. We can't wait. Milwaukee can't wait for us to sit around and wait for the perfect model. Okay, and as someone said, the perfect can't get in the way of the better. We had to do better, and we have to do better now. So, and showing this helps engage everyone. It helps everyone get through those hard conversations of why it's so important that we don't walk out of this meeting without making a decision and without moving forward, the why behind we're doing this. We also, with our build out, we are now bringing it back to the planning, because as we build out, this is where, you know, the rubber hits the road. We need the details. We know exactly. So you say we're not going to have AccuPlacer anymore. Well, how are we going to place our students? That's the build out. If you say we're going to move our Dev Ed courses and integrate them with our gateway courses, what does that actually look like? How does that work with scheduling? How does that work with faculty load? Those are the kinds of questions that's part of your build out. So it goes back to that planning and engagement as well. Part of that also, when you're, again, you can imagine how that planning piece, those planning pieces can get kind of contentious. So again, we spent MATC Day, last year was with Dr. Rennick, but this year we're focusing more on the social justice impact because, again, if we can keep everyone focused on that, we can really find consensus and find commonality in our compassion for our students. So in this past March, we brought Dr. Rob Johnston in to present the case for urgency, economic mobility and equity as our keynote speaker. But we also had workshops on unlearning racism, on trauma-informed care, and then we had our 211 community partners and resources come and provide workshops. We also had a student voice. The student is in the photo here. And then because we couldn't bring a lot of students, we had a Student Voices video show at the end of the day to remind everybody why we did all of this. So instead of trying to, build out the actual nitty-gritty, we, on that day, bringing 1,200 people in together again to say, what else can we do? Well, we had already done all that. We wanted them to have a deeper engagement to build the support of the build-out so that we could make this messy middle more bearable, really, and show and help everybody how they could do something different tomorrow with the students, that we don't have to wait till we build the formal guided pathways. We can all make a difference in our students' lives right now through some of these tools. So we don't expect every employee to solve every student problem, but we do expect them to be able to connect that student with someone or an agency who can help solve their problems. So that was our focus, and that's how we connect this planning, engaging, making the case, all with the build out. Because if you suddenly just say, well, one part's done and now we're building out, you're just going to end up going back in circles again because people will forget why we're doing it. And so the last part, of course, is the launch and evaluate. And of course, the build out is directly related to that because this is the scary part. This is when you say we're doing it. And as I mentioned, for example, we have removed the AccuPlacer as a one high-stakes placement assessment. We replaced that with multiple measures. We have integrated our Dev Ed work with our college math and English gateway courses, and we've created multiple math pathways that are more appropriate for all of our various programs. Now, when I say that they've all launched this spring, they've already gone into the evaluation phase. They are in the check part of the Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. So we're looking at the data to continue to make these better for the summer and the fall. So even when you launch, you're really just kind of launching and then reconsidering as you go along. This summer, this is the next launch. The next thing we're doing is the next piece of the build-out. Programs that are in 2 of our new 8 pathways will leave their respective schools, their current schools, and officially join their new pathway with an infrastructure that was built around the needs of the students by collapsing traditional roles of academic and student support services. The other pathways, however, they named themselves when they said they are the bleeding edge pathways, but we don't want the other pathways to be dormant, so we're using data to decide which of the pathways and the programs within those pathways should be the bleeding edge for some of the topics that you see here on the screen that we're going to be launching over the next 6 to 12 months. And in addition to all of this, our president is working with an organizational strategist to ensure that beyond student services and academics, where too many people kind of place everything about guided pathways, but beyond that, are we built for student success in the entire district? And that means every department and division could be on the table for possible reorganization, but not change for change's sake, but really change that is data-informed and student-centered.
So like Christina said earlier, don't let perfection get in the way of better. And you need to remember, and we need to remember, students are first. This process is messy. You will experience challenges and growing pains with unintended consequences. Just remember to not give up. A wise woman named Gretchen Schmidt once told us, review what isn't working, fix it, and keep going. We try to remember to strive for continuous improvement. We try to keep in mind that this isn't just about academics or student services. This is about all of us. So our finance and facilities areas, for example, may not have, seen or felt the initial changes, but eventually every area will need to make the change to ensure student success at all levels. You'll see it. It just happens.
All right, so we're pretty much done here, and I guess if we can leave anything with you to think about for today, it's just that this is such important, difficult work, but it has to be done, and we're the ones that have to do it. And the fact that you invested, your Friday lunch to sit here and listen to it, because we do the same thing. We sit in on webinars all the time, hoping to hear something that might help us with one of the situations we're dealing with or get to the next level, whatever it might be. And so start with that end in mind at the institutional level, but also at the process level, and just keep asking ourselves, what will success look like? How will it feel? And how is this going to positively impact our student experience? We rely on having a common understanding and passion for the social justice of Milwaukee to say that's not good enough. And we have to keep coming back and saying that whenever we really get caught in the weeds. And finally, we are just lucky enough to have a president, Dr. Vicki Martin, who is visionary, and she encourages us all to be innovative. And we're innovative enough and bold enough to make mistakes. So if someone is, if you're not, getting somebody mad at you, then you're probably not doing enough. You're not pushing the boundaries hard enough there. So be innovative and bold enough to make those mistakes, but then be courageous enough to admit that they were mistakes, and then smart enough to fix them quickly and learn from them. And that's certainly where we are right now, making our mistakes, but hopefully learning from them. So I hope that answered Amy's question about the build-out, but any other questions right now?
There's a couple, Christine and Michelle, and thank you both. And Michelle, I'm grateful for saying that I'm wise. Somehow I can't figure out how to get your videos to play on Adobe. And so that's wisdom or not understanding my own capacity, but thank you all under the technical difficulties we had in the beginning to deliver this such very important information. You all know that I talk about you all the time because you have built that change management, continuous improvement in real engagement structure at Milwaukee that I think is going to be fundamental to your success in this work, and I am so happy to have you talk about it. There is a question about who conducted your Unlearning Racism session, ladies. Do you mind sharing that information?
No, of course not. It was the YWCA.
Okay. In Milwaukee?
In Milwaukee, the YW, and it's, okay. And they have a couple different versions, everything from a shorter version to half-day workshops, that kind of thing. So we worked with them to make it work for the day. They were wonderful partners.
Thank you, Christine. And I know that a lot of different organizations are starting to do some very deliberate equity and race sessions that are related to guided pathways, but also institutional change for students. And so if you all need more information about that, please email me. I have a couple other contacts that I can help you with. Christine, there's also a question about the sponsorship. Christine, back to that sponsorship question. I think Amy's talking about sponsorship of the cabinet and the institutional administration, and you talked about Vicki, who I also think is on her unwavering support. And but can you talk a bit more about the role of the administration and the board, who has really been advocates for this work at MATC?
Sure. I think part of that is we've, as a culture, been talking about and focusing on change management and leadership under change for a while. And I know Dr. Martin invested quite a bit of time working with her team and having her team really work on developing as a team and then as a leadership team, so not just team or leaders as overseeing their own divisions, the vice presidents, but really working together as a cohesive team and working, putting in some of the hours and some of that heavy lifting before we actually joined on to Guided Pathways and while we go on to Guided Pathways, I think has been extremely helpful in terms of that. I think the communication piece and making sure that there's enough working, that kind of talking to each other, not talking at each other, talking with each other, problem solving together instead of dealing with, okay, if something's gone wrong, just the overall attitude of saying, well, let's work the problem and move forward, as opposed to, well, let's just point fingers at each other and kind of thing. But that concept of the CQI root cause analysis, that was all part of a cultural shift that began before Guided Pathways. But it's never too late to implement and do that. The second part with the pathways, and I should have mentioned this, Dr. Martin provides the board with a monthly update. She's also added Guided Pathways, including our success metrics, to her annual goals. And so by having this kind of public declaration, we can't waver. Nothing can be more important than this work because it's all tied back to Dr. Martin's annual goals, which are then tied directly to our strategic goals, which of course is the manifestation of our mission. So by making sure that all of that is aligned, it's very difficult to waver. It's very difficult, it's very easy to waver, excuse me. But once someone wavers, it's easier to get them back on and really say, but how is this helping? How is this supporting our mission? What goal is it linked to? That type of thing. So having that very public declaration and bringing the board in and reminding them all the time that this is important work, it's messy work, and we're going as fast really as you physically or mentally can, and we're still moving forward and listening to them and getting their feedback from the constituencies that the board represents, taking that into consideration and keeping them involved every step of the way. It's not like this is a big secret and you're going to suddenly unveil everything. People should start feeling and hearing about the changes throughout the journey. Does that answer that?
I think it does, Christine.
Okay.
And I think that if you and Michelle can circle back, the one thing I'd like you to cover that I think a lot of colleges struggle with that you all really did in the beginning, I've said it to you in many other institutions that sometimes you have to slow down to go fast. And you all spent some very strategic, deliberate time building out that engagement structure in the beginning from when you went from a very small group of champions to 200 people volunteering to be on work groups. And if you can circle back through that again and really talk about how that changed the engagement and the support and the belief that this was possible at MATC, because I can tell from my being there during that and after that how significant that was to your overall momentum on this work.
Sure. I think the first part is probably just the idea that we knew this was going to come across as a shiny object if we didn't do it differently. So by doing it differently right from the beginning, meaning that we developed an actual communications plan with our director, Tony Tagliavia is fabulous, and we sat down and we marked out, well, what needs to be said when, by whom, to whom, and how will we get that message across. And really, making sure that we thought about it in terms of, you don't launch something on January 5th because your faculty aren't here. And, kind of using natural breaks and like spring break and MATC days, those professional development days. We also have our professional development non-student, non-classroom days, so the faculty are on campus, utilizing all those opportunities to say, yep, everything is important, finishing your course outcome summaries, et cetera, but we're also going to be talking about guided pathways, or we're linking it. We just never dropped the ball, and that really is because our communications department had mapped that out with us, with academics and student services and other areas to make sure it had a natural flow through a semester, and committing to an entire semester. And there were times when we wanted to change everything right away, and it was like, no, we're not quite there yet. And I think that made a difference rather than jumping into it. We always knew we were going to wait till at least after in March or April before we asked for any volunteers, and to really methodically mark out how could we use every opportunity to tell our story and to make our case. So I think it was started right from the beginning, thinking about it differently, and making everyone, care and want to know more and want to be part of it.
It's almost like planting a garden. You keep planting these seeds, and the more and more that you plant, the more you're going to get in return. And by keeping it fresh constantly and relevant and in the forefront of everybody's mind, I think that's it no longer was just the shiny object. It was really turning into this beautiful garden.
I guess one last...
Go ahead, Christina.
No, I was just going to say that another thing was we never said Guided Pathways was an initiative.
Nope.
We made sure that everyone understood that it was a framework by which we could integrate all the current fabulous initiatives we already had going on, but some of them were only pilots or limited in success, into a new way of looking at things. And I think people watch our first little video when they get the chance, they'll see how we told that part of the story.
And ladies, I think we have time for one more question. And for the folks that have asked about the slides, if you want them immediately, please email me and I'll send you a copy of them. Sarah's working with the AACC web folks to build a platform for all the webinars and the related slides on the Pathways Resources site, and I just texted her and she said she's going to circle back next week. So hopefully we'll have it all up next week. But if you'd like the slides that include the video today or over in the early part of next week, just email me directly and I'll send them along. And the last question is the question that I invariably get at every institution that we go to, particularly ones that have shared governance in union environments, and you all have no shortage of labor conversations at your campus. Christina and Michelle, can you talk a bit about how all of the different labor organizations fit into this in a way that doesn't, that doesn't get down too far in the weeds, but is cognizant of that you all knew that was a dynamic that you had to manage?
Sure. Our faculty is Local 212, and they are still unionized. And they were brought in from the minute of the application to the AACC as part of the Game Changers with us. So again, under different leaders have different styles. Dr. Martin believes in collaboration, and it's not just rubber stamping. It is we need to hear from the faculty. To make Guided Pathways work, you need, in our opinion, staff and faculty. And so we still have 587 union, well, in some ways, recognized here. But it's more important that instead of thinking union, non-union, it is all the employee groups and departments and divisions need to be involved in the conversation. So we have... And also, and a separate thing is, while other things are happening that might be more related to our employee handbook or other labor relation issues, we really make a point to try to extract Guided Pathways from those discussions, to really say, Guided Pathways is about the student experience. Guided Pathways is about rebuilding based on the students. And so it's, again, by stating with our main case, our main why, we can try at least not to in any way kind of bring together Guided Pathways with any other particular labor issues that might be going on. So it is, it's really in the weeds and it's really tough, but it's a spirit of collaboration from the faculty leadership has been amazing, and they are, like I said, they didn't populate as many of the first set of design teams, but they sure have shown up at the tables ever since then. And so once they saw this wasn't just another shiny object. So that's one piece of it, and Michelle wanted to add in.
And I think, too, that Christine had mentioned earlier in the presentation that educators really believe education is the way out of poverty, so why wouldn't you want to be a part of this process? And I think ultimately that's where our faculty and our staff come together who work with these students on a daily basis, and they want to be the catalyst and help them make life better for themselves, their families, future generations, on and on and on.
I think that I couldn't agree more that that is the prevailing culture at your institution. And having been followed around by your union lead for a couple of days, I think that that once the spark around the equity and economic mobility and poverty piece of this turned on, there was no going back from that, and that is something that is noteworthy and something that I talk about in other settings for sure. Well, ladies, I am grateful for your amazing presentation, the time on a Friday afternoon, and for your honesty about the MATC story. I appreciate you, and I was very happy to hear it. I can't hear it enough because I am so excited about your progress and your successes. For all of you that have joined, thank you for taking the time on a Friday afternoon to join us. Keep checking pathwaysresources.org. We're getting this all pulled together and put up at once. I can share the slides in the short term if you email me, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend and a wonderful end of the semester for those of you that have not completed the spring semester yet. Thank you, ladies. I will talk to you soon, and everyone have a wonderful weekend.
Thanks, you too. Take care.
Bye-bye.